Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. It's morning for me. Having a little bit of coffee. I wanted to do an energy update, and I'm speaking quietly. I have a tendency to yell, but it's somewhat early here, so I'm trying not to wake everybody up. Or maybe I do want to wake everybody up. Kind of the theme right now, and I'm just going to go right into it and do a little energy update, and then I'll be doing a light language and energy share video. So I'm just going to back up and kind of say that this week has been really interesting for me. This last 2 weeks, we'll say. I found myself going in and out of quite a few triggers, right? How many of us have been triggered, especially those of us that are in the United States? You know, we have the world show, I'm going to call it, the greatest show on earth, playing out right now. And it's very distracting, to say the least. So I'm just going to say that everything I'm sharing today is from my own perspective, of course. So my intention is the highest levels of love, light, and unity, oneness. And so I'm trying to stay somewhat neutral, because there are aspects of me that have certain opinions about things. And the ego, of course, that I have, that everybody has certain opinions. Options, opting into ionic reality, right? That I want to choose or look at or dissect and take apart what's going on the world stage. But my biggest message that I keep getting from my guides is it's just distraction. And I did a video a while ago about distract, what that means. And essentially it means to pull apart, right? Which is the opposite of yoga. For example, yoga is to bring together in oneness, to yoke together the mind, the body, the spirit. And distraction does the exact opposite, pulls our attention, our focus into many different directions. And it makes it challenging sometimes for us to stay focused on what is important to us. And while this may seem important in a lot of ways, and it may be, again, my intention is to stay neutral here. What's more important is how we are responding to it. It's challenging when we wake up, for example, and we see things that maybe we didn't see before. And I did a video not too long ago about, with all the bubbles that I wrote out on my whiteboard or glass board, about the different bubbles and layers of awakening. And I've been guided to remind everybody about that not everybody is in the same bubble of reality. The layer that I'm awake to may not be the layer that somebody else might be aware of. The truth that I see, feel, and understand may not be what somebody else is in the space of understanding and seeing. And so this can be frustrating for a lot of us. And it can be frustrating because many of us so desperately want our brothers and sisters to see it, to wake up to it, and to see that this particular entity, person, belief structure is false, or perhaps is not in alignment with love, light. And sometimes, you know, when we begin to, we hear the words with ears to hear and eyes to see. Sometimes we think we're awake to what we're seeing, what's playing out, because those beliefs are attached, those awakenings are attached to a particular belief about a person, place, or thing. But as we expand, we begin to recognize that many of the beliefs that we even have are based on realities that are no longer real. And I'm speaking on a really multidimensional level right now, because when I say that, this belief structure encompasses our beliefs around, again, people that are perhaps politicians or world leaders. These beliefs are structured around religion, structured around certain I said archonic. That was a Freudian slip, right? Iconic, right? People. So we believed this person was good, and then we find out that they're not. And here we've invested our valued or our time or our valued energy into making them an icon, someone that we can believe in. I'm hearing that, what's that song? Give me something to believe in. People want something to believe in, right? Desperately right now. And so a lot of people are still clinging to this old structure, this old system that really is playing out. And so what I've been kind of guided to share with everybody is just to remind everybody that all of it's, even science, I'm starting to see a lot of different science, I call them clues. So in my writing, I write about the fact that what we know about platonic solids has changed. What we know about, I was getting messages about Schrodinger's cat. Is it Schrodinger or Schrodinger's cat? Like, there's so much that has yet to be told to us, so to speak, about our reality in the mainstream that would basically put all of what we're seeing, we would take a step back and go, none of this matters. But that's not being shown to us right now. What's being shown to us is propaganda. And that is what many people are focusing on. So for myself, I was really guided, as always, to take a step back, to see things from as neutral a perspective as possible, to recognize when I'm being triggered about certain belief systems that I still have, right? To honor others when I see that they're being triggered by their own belief systems and patterns, and mostly by all the false evidence appearing real. I know we've all heard that term before, many of us have, for fear. I talked about this in my last video. Fear doesn't mean we're paranoid necessarily, or constantly biting our nails, what's happening next. Yes, that is part of it. Projecting a potential into our field by us being afraid of what may show up around the corner for us is definitely something that's happening right now for many. But part of it, the biggest message that I've been seeing, is that the false evidence appearing real is things that are being projected holographically in front of us, saying, look at me, look at this person behaving this way, look at this particular iconic being, worship them, believe in this. Because the belief that we create around something holds energy. And it really does either pull us off of our path into that other false evidence appearing real reality structure. For example, we say we want someone to believe in, and these false structures say, here you go, believe in this. And this is why you should believe in this. Here's the false evidence to support the belief system that we want you to buy into, to give value to. I had a reading this week with a beautiful starseed light worker who is just tapping into this wealth of information. She helps a lot of people. I always meet the coolest people through the work that I do, and who are really making a difference and impact. But this one particular session stood out to me because it was so symbolic of what's going on. And I saw her holding a purse, and in this purse there was money. And I didn't quite understand what this meant. So let me just kind of back up for a moment. For those of you out there who are starting to see things or have maybe your intuition is coming online, the spirit speaks to us oftentimes in symbols. And the symbol can sometimes, like a dream, you know, a lot of times we expect a psychic or a medium or someone to know exactly what is going on in our lives. And then we get a reading from them and it all comes back to us in kind of code. Or there's a picture that's being shown to them and we might scratch our heads and go, what does that mean? That happens all the time with myself. Sometimes it's for us to figure out on our own. But I was shown with her, she was pulling money out of her satchel. And I recognized that the purse had a particular style to it. It was bigger than what she needed because it was full of potential, it was full of value. She was carrying it on her shoulder and she would pull this money out and hand it to these beings that were essentially taking her on a trip. It looked like she was getting ready to travel. And as soon as she handed her money over, she would fall down this rabbit hole like Alice in Wonderland. And I would see her just falling down this rabbit hole and falling into this space. There were all of these entities there. The vision kind of looked like a cartoon, like one of those Japan, what do they call enemy? Like I think they're big in Japan. The animation, enemy. Anyways, anime. Anyways, and these cartoon characters were pulling her in many different directions. She was fine, but they were yelling at her, "Pay attention to me! Pay attention to me!" And I recognized after we spoke for a little bit what that symbolism represented, because this woman is a medium and a psychic. And sometimes what happens is, this is a representation, by the way, I'm just going to share. So thank you for allowing me to share a little bit of this. You know who you are. Because it represents a lot of people right now. For her, she was giving her energy to particular beings that were assisting her. And these beautiful beings that are powerful and very helpful, from what I was shown, are no longer needed on her path. She's actually dipping down in order to connect with them. Not that they are, and I'm talking about, guys, archangels. I'm talking about deities. I'm talking about, and I'm tying this all in. I'm seeing where this is kind of going, this message this morning. Entities, right? Iconic beings who represent power. And so everybody has somebody in their reality that they pray to, that they worship, that they admire. And while what I'm being shown, it's very important for us to show gratitude, and we can give our space of love and appreciation. And yes, these beings can assist us. It's not that they aren't going to help us anymore. But I'm being shown that it's time to let go of our attachments to these entities. Because as we expand, our need to call them in dissipates. Because we essentially are them. It's almost like we've evolved into the space that we were asking them to come out of to assist us, if that makes sense. And I could go to so many different directions. This particular light worker that I was working with, she's worked strongly with certain beings. And by giving her value to them, there sets up a need for an energy exchange. And so when they need something from her, she is essentially giving them some of her energy as well. And this is creating an imbalance in her own field, physically, as well as in other ways that are unseen, right? Because as above, so below, as within, so without. Just because we don't see it doesn't mean that it's not happening on an energetic level. And so that was an important message that came through for her. But anytime I do sessions, I mean, it's amazing how I'll have 5 people I do sessions with, right? And they're all very similar in what they're experiencing in their life often. 4 out of the 5, we'll say, have similarities. So I like to share when that happens, because that means it can be something maybe helpful on a collective scale, right? So let me go back to what I was saying earlier. So with her, that money represents value, and essentially she's taking it out of her purse, which is her packet of value. And she's taking it to take this trip to say, please help me, or let me see this. When in reality, what I was shown is let go of the purse. And I actually have to email this lovely person, because I saw this after our session. I kind of had more things come through, aha moments, so to speak. Anyways, so this purse, I was guided afterwards to really meditate on this a little bit. And the question I've been guided to kind of ask, have whoever's watching this ask, what is it that we're hanging on to? What is it that's our purse, that's strapped to our body, that we think is outside of us, that we are essentially giving our energy value, say, I'm going to use those words interchangeably for this particular video, in order to ask for something in return, because we don't need to do that anymore. Now, there are some times that we may feel that we are in a place and we just pray and say, Archangel so-and-so, please help me, show me the path that direction I need to go right now. However, I am also being guided to remind everybody that not all entities, deities, and beings are 100% in the knowing. Okay, let me rephrase this. Our highest aspect, our own version of us that is truly connected to Source, is with those beings. So the bigger, more important message is, let go of the need to bypass and go to these beings. Go straight to the Source. So what I was shown is that's one version of the purse strings, the attachments that many of the Lightworker community are still holding on to. It's worked for them. It's worked for me for years. It's hard sometimes to let that go. The need to have, I worked with another beautiful Lightworker who is a powerful healer. I mean, her energy is just out of this world. All of our energy is, right? She had an altar that the biggest altar I've ever seen in her room. And I was guided just to tell her to get rid of it. Get rid of it all. She had, all of these things she had picked up from India, Hanumanasana, and I never say the names right, so apologies on those. And I say this with respect, because these deities and beings are wonderful oftentimes. This isn't like, oh, they're bad or they're good. It's about getting away from the judgment around that as well. This is more about our attachments to our beliefs, which is creating a giving of our value to that particular deity as more than us, as needing protection, as giving us healing. We've got this at this stage of our development. They've expanded and they're moving on. It's time for us to expand and move on as well. So I was shown that it was really time for her just to keep a few items that were really near and dear to her heart. Because all of that energy that she had been putting into this beautiful altar was dusty. It belonged to another version of her. It created separation from her and spirit and source. It created a belief that in order for her to gain power from these objects that she was objectifying, she had to keep building in this material plane. So I want to be very clear here. It's not that I'm saying don't have an altar. The question is, are we putting more belief and value into the material items that represent spirit? Or are we putting more value into these spirits in general as more powerful than us? That is where we are being invited. For some, that creates a big imbalance. For some, that gives our power away to that entity, especially if that entity is not 100% in alignment with what it is that represents do no harm to any sentient kind, or 100% sovereignty for all, so to speak. But most of what I'm referring to are the entities that do. They're here to help us. But that's also a story that we've been fed. Not all beings are here to help us. They've got other things going on as well. Sometimes it's this human belief that we've had created that says that's all they're here to do. That would be, maybe in some cases, that was true. And I'm being kind of guided to say, yes, that is true, was true. But is that still true? Is that still, my friend Candace the other day said, this is a morphogenic field that we're tapping into. Morphing, genetic. So as they're morphing and evolving, that shifts what their purposes are, as does ours. So while some of us may have had a purpose at one time to be, let's say, a truther, and again, this is beautiful, we might have now stepped away from that and said, okay, I've fulfilled that purpose to the highest of my ability, and I feel like I'm being called to go and work with children who are coming out of an abusive situation. That changes the entire focus, because now we're allowing that expansion, that expression of who we were was expressed, right? Expressed, to squeeze something out and express it. And now we're in a different place, a different bubble. And now if we were to cling on to that old concept of who we were, it actually takes more energy to do that. And it's more density is what I'm being guided to share. So I kind of went into 5 different fields here. One, the purse strings that we're attaching to, there are strings attached to the value that we've given other things, whether they be material or immaterial, it doesn't matter. It's still a value system. The money that was shown to me was an example of something that we are doing an energy exchange for. With this particular person, it wasn't a bad thing. For example, it was just time to move on, because that was something that was actually not necessary anymore. And this is the way it is for a lot of those who are eyes open, heart open, ears open, so on and so forth. Now, for others that are it might mean, again, the deities. It might mean the iconic images. I was shown the picture. Remember when we were teenagers and we had posters up of people that we worshipped, for example? That seems so like, oh, I just love it. I want to put it up because it makes me feel good. Sure, maybe it's a geometry that we look at that just makes us feel great. That doesn't mean we're going to put up a picture, for example, of some Hollywood star and we're just going to paste our whole room in pictures of this Hollywood star. We did that when we were kids, right? Maybe. I had the goofiest posters up in my room now that I think about it. But my point is, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. This is not judgment. The question is it time to peel off the posters, the pictures that have been absorbing our energy, that we've been giving our energy to? And this is a different bubble. Before, what I was talking about with the exchange between deities and archangels and beautiful beings of light is a higher expression of that. You know, and sometimes we do feel better when we have that assistance. But these beings are always assisting us. And there's this theme that says, well, we have to ask for help. We can ask for help. But why go around and through source? It's like having to go, and my mother was, of course, for example, raised as Catholic. And she would always ask, why do I have to tell the priest? Why can't I go directly to God? As a kid, it just didn't feel right for her. And this is, in a nutshell, what we're being guided to look at. Who are we saying, yes, I'd like 2 tickets to get onto this ride? We can just get right onto the ride. We're already on the ride. We could look at this from all different angles. So I'm going to take it back to the beginning of this conversation about the beliefs. Because when we give somebody our value and we say, I honor you, here you go. Please be the representative for me. In some realities, that's necessary. But what reality are we playing in? What reality do we want to play in? What are we creating? And so while there is some necessity to that still from one perspective, on an energetic perspective, it's time to clip the purse strings and reconnect to the heartstrings, which is our true soundology. It's our truth. It's our space of creative accuracy. Because there's a lot of people looking in their purse and saying, I'm all out of, I don't have any, I don't believe in this anymore. I don't have any more to give, because that value's been used up and they've run out of places to put their value. And so it's time to go back into valuing ourselves, our highest aspect. Source energy, Mother Earth, our connections with each other, our connections with love and gratitude and joy and abundance in that arena. So again, what are we feeding? I'm also being guided to talk about addictions briefly. If you guys haven't seen the video, I think Jason Estes did a really great video recently on addictions, and I think even maybe Andrew Bartzis did as well. But I'm not going to go into that. That's not my my intention today. But this does tie in a little bit with addictions, because when we give ourselves, always give something or worship something, that can become an addiction, and it can be an avoidance mechanism. If we only think that these other beings, these other iconic images, this Hollywood star is better than us or knows more than us. We could go into scientists. Well, it's science. So what I saw, some of us are seeing science. We don't know how to explain it, right? A lot of the stuff I write about is quantum physics and quantum computing. We get it on an innate level. We don't necessarily have to say, okay, tell me what it is that means, because that might be a limited view of what they're seeing. We might be seeing a more expansive view to the meaning behind it. And it may not be about logically understanding it. It might be about feeling it. So again, the heartstrings is not outside of us. The purse strings are. And what we're dipping our energy, what we're gifting our energy away, it's not about being selfish and saying, no, this is my energy. Like I'm seeing Gollum from The Lord of the Rings, right? But it is about just maybe taking a step back and saying, I don't need that anymore. Detaching ourselves from it allows us to find more of a oneness and unification with our true power. I feel like there's so many places I could go with this, but I'm going to end on this note. This is the biggest message that's been coming through. The other message that's coming through is in regards to, so let me rein it all back in, was about the power of belief. So that money represents belief. And this is not, I'm not talking about for this particular person I worked with. For hers, it was something completely different. She's there. A lot of people I work with are there. Sometimes we just need confirmation, or we need a little energy boost, for example. It's okay to ask each other for help. It's okay to ask these beings for assistance from time to time, but it doesn't mean we should continually worship and give all of our power or value them as more powerful than us, is in a nutshell. So this is a representation of what we're seeing playing out in politics, in Hollywood, I see a lot of people who really value, let's say, a particular fashion designer. What have we been putting up on stage, on a pedestal? It could be somebody who is a spiritual guide, even, worshiping that person as the all-knowing, Again, it's no more of that. That is an, I'm being guided to go back into false evidence appearing real. That doesn't mean that they are false or that they are providing evidence for us to show us what's false. That's a different example. That I'm talking about the controlling, the controllers. The controllers and the people who have been controlling, so to speak, our reality structure, meaning through television, through the monetary system, through the political system, that's a completely different ball of wax. And that is one example, okay? But if you're hearing this and you're going, well, I really enjoy, let's say, is it Mooji? Is that his name, Mooji, Moojie? I really like his teachings. That doesn't mean I'm gonna think he's better than I am. But I really respect him. And I think he's much more knowledgeable in many ways than I am. That's true. I would be lying to myself if I were to say I'm smarter than he is, or I'm more knowledgeable spiritually than he is. But on the flip side, I also recognize that there are aspects of me that I'm not going to say, okay, now here you go, I worship you, teach me. I'm going to say, may the light within me see the light within you, and let's meet at this level, because we are all equal in that regard. No one is better or smarter than another person in that way, because when it comes to spirit, we are all connected to source. But it's more about us now at this point holding the responsibility for ourselves